A little girl with pigtails and a tiny black dress stands in front of a camera on a black and white TV set. She is only 5 years old. She doesn't know how to read yet, but somehow she memorizes her lines anyway. And when the cameras roll, she becomes Wednesday Addams, one of the most unforgettable characters in television history. The year is 1964, and nobody on that set, not the directors, not the producers, not even that little girl herself, has any idea what the decades ahead are going to bring. Because the story of the kids who played the Addams family is not a simple Hollywood fairy tale. It is something much stranger, much darker, and much more human than anything the show ever put on screen. Some of them fought addiction. Some of them disappeared into quiet lives behind the camera. One became a global superstar at 20 years old and admitted it made her deeply unhappy. Another needed his fans to crowdfund his burial. And one man became one of the most recognized faces on the entire internet without ever starring in a single major film. These are the real stories, not the glossy version, the real one. And by the time we get to the end, you're going to feel something you did not expect. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Lisa Loring was born on February 16th, 1958 on a small island called Kwajalein in the Marshall Islands. Her parents were both in the Navy, which meant the family moved around constantly. Life was always shifting under her feet. Before most kids even know what a camera is, Lisa was already in front of one. She started modeling at just 3 years old. Think about that for a second. 3 years old. While other little kids were drawing pictures and playing with toys, she was holding still for photographers and learning how to perform. By the time she was 5.5, something incredible happened. She was cast as Wednesday Addams in the original Addams Family TV show. The producers chose her for a very specific reason. Her face looked almost exactly like the face of Carolyn Jones, the actress who played Morticia. It was like looking at a tiny version of Wednesday's mother. And even though Lisa could barely read, she memorized every single one of her lines. She filmed all 64 episodes of that show between 1964 and 1966. And she did it with a sweetness and innocence that made Wednesday feel like a real kid rather than just a spooky character. What made those years even more special was the warmth she felt on set. She later said that the cast felt like her real family. Carolyn Jones and John Astin, the actors who played her TV parents, wrapped around her with a kind of love and steadiness that a young child desperately needs. For a little girl growing up in a world that never stopped moving, that set was a safe place. But then the show ended. The problem was simple and expensive. Converting those incredibly detailed black and white sets to color television would have cost too much money. So they shut it down. And just like that, Lisa's safe place disappeared. She bounced into smaller roles here and there. She appeared briefly on another show. She waited. The phone stayed quiet for long stretches of time. A reunion movie in 1977 brought her back as an older version of Wednesday, and for a moment it felt like the spark was returning. But then it faded again. Her most steady adult acting work came on a soap opera called As the World Turns, where she played a character named Cricket Montgomery from 1980 to 1983. That role meant a lot to her. But behind the scenes, Lisa's personal life was carrying a weight that most people never saw. She got married at 15 years old. In 1974, she had her first daughter, Vanessa. And in that same year, her own mother died from alcoholism at just 34 years old. 34. Think about how young that is. That loss stayed with Lisa for the rest of her life. She married again in 1981, had another daughter named Marianne, but that marriage only lasted 2 years. Then in 1987, she married a man named Jerry Butler who worked in adult films. The relationship became painfully public. They went on talk shows together, trying to work through their problems while cameras captured everything. Lisa said she believed him when he promised to leave that world behind. But about 8 months later, she found out he had kept working anyway. The betrayal cut deep, and the strain of that marriage pushed her toward heroin. The addiction slowly took over more and more of her days. Then came a moment so devastating it is hard to even write about. In 1991, Lisa walked into a room and found her close friend Kelly Van Dyke's body. Kelly had taken her own life. The shock of that discovery completely shattered something inside Lisa. She tried to follow the same path, overdosing in an attempt to end her own life. But she survived. In 1992, she entered rehab and got clean. And after that, she quietly stepped away from Hollywood altogether. She took a job at an interior design firm in Santa Monica and tried to rebuild a regular life. She told a magazine in 1995 that she still dreamed of acting again, that she would love to be in a Quentin Tarantino film someday. That invitation never came. Time kept moving. And on January 28, 2023, Lisa Loring died at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank. She was 64 years old. For days before that, she had suffered a massive stroke caused by high blood pressure made worse by years of smoking. Her family kept her on life support for 3 days before making the heartbreaking decision to let her go. Her daughter Vanessa said she passed peacefully, with both of her daughters holding her hands. When she died, John Astin, the man who played Gomez Addams and who had wrapped her in warmth as a child on that set, became the only surviving main cast member from the original show. He was 95 years old, and somewhere in those years between 1964 and 2023, that little girl who could not read her own lines became something none of them could have predicted. She became a memory that an entire generation carries gently inside them. Now let's talk about the boy who played her brother. Ken Weatherwax was born on September 29, 1955 in Los Angeles. On paper, he came from a Hollywood family. His aunt was Ruby Keeler, a famous musical star from the 1930s. His half-brother had appeared on the original Lassie show. His uncles actually owned and trained the famous Lassie dog. The family name had a kind of glow around it. But for Ken, that glow never quite reached him. He was 9 years old when he landed the role of Pugsley Addams. He had gotten his start in a toothpaste commercial, and somehow that led him to one of the most beloved family shows in television history. He worked alongside Lisa Loring for all 64 episodes, and everything seemed okay while the cameras were rolling. But the moment the show ended, the silence hit him like a wall. He later told journalist Bill O'Reilly in 2008 that he did not handle the end of the show well at all. He got thrown out of school, then another school, then another. By his own count, he was expelled from 6 or 7 different schools. At 17 years old, with nowhere else to turn, he joined the United States Army. Not because he dreamed of serving, but because he needed somewhere to go. After the military, he withdrew all the money he had earned from 3 years on the Addams Family. That total came to $17,000. That works out to about $5,600 per year. He used that money to try to start fresh. The road ahead stayed difficult. He drifted through jobs for a couple of years before finally finding something that gave him a sense of purpose. He became a grip at Universal Studios and stayed there for nearly 20 years. A grip is someone who works behind the scenes on film sets, handling equipment and making sure productions run smoothly. He told ABC News in 2006 that he actually preferred life behind the camera because it felt calmer, quieter, more real. Ken never bought a house. He moved between his mother's place, the homes of girlfriends, and a rented storage unit that he jokingly called his shop. When his mother suffered a second stroke in 2002, he stepped away from everything to become her full-time caregiver. That quiet act of love pulled him even further from the spotlight. Most people had no idea where he was or what had become of him. On December 7, 2014, Ken Weatherwax died of a heart attack in West Hills, Los Angeles. He was 59 years old. His niece Shannon shared the news on Facebook and wrote something simple and beautiful. She said that whenever anyone heard the Addams Family theme song, they should think of him. Those words said more about who he was than any long speech ever could. But here is the part that truly breaks your heart. His family could not afford to pay for his burial. Friends and fans had to organize a crowdfunding campaign to cover the costs. The campaign was organized by the owner of a tour company in Hollywood, and enough money was raised to give him a proper farewell. His remains were placed at Valhalla Memorial Park Cemetery in North Hollywood in 2017, 3 years after his death. Some of his ashes were kept on display at a museum. At his memorial service, Lisa Loring showed up. So did Butch Patrick, who had played Eddie Munster on the Munsters. And a group of Universal Studios grips, men who had worked beside Ken for decades, came to stand for him in that room. They were his real family, not the Addams family. The people who had stood beside him in the quiet parts of life that nobody else noticed. Now we move from the black and white world of the 1960s to the early 1990s, where a brand new version of the Addams family was coming to the big screen. And the girl who played Wednesday this time around was not just performing a role. She was carrying the weight of a whole childhood on her small shoulders. Christina Ricci was born on February 12, 1980 in Santa Monica, California. She was the youngest of 4 children in a home that was not always safe. Her father had a violent temper, and she once described him as a failed cult leader who turned his anger into something frightening. Her mother had been a model, and Christina watched her navigate the world with a kind of elegance that felt almost impossible inside their chaotic home. The contrast between what life looked like on the outside and what it felt like on the inside stayed with Christina for a very long time. When she was 8 years old, she was standing in a school Christmas play when someone in the crowd noticed her. That single moment opened the door to her first film role. By 9, she was on a movie set alongside Cher and Winona Ryder in a film called Mermaids. She would sneak into their trailers to escape her tutor, and she found a warmth there that made the long days feel softer. Then at 10 years old, she was cast as Wednesday Addams. And when she put on that black dress, something inside her completely clicked. The adults around her almost immediately realized that this child understood scenes in a way that most kids her age simply did not. The film's director, Barry Sonnenfeld, later remembered that whenever anyone had a concern about how a scene should go, they sent Christina to speak for them. A 10-year-old became the voice of the adult cast because she was the one who could find the right words. At the very first table read, she stood up and argued that Uncle Fester should be the real Fester and not some fake imposter. And the adults listened. They followed her lead. The first Addams Family film made $191 million on a budget of just $30 million. The sequel, Addams Family Values, came in 1993 and gave Wednesday an even bigger role. Christina played her with a calm, burning intensity that you simply cannot take your eyes off. Raul Julia, who played Gomez Addams, was growing weaker during that filming, though most of the cast did not fully understand how serious it was. When he died in October 1994, the idea of a third film vanished completely. As Christina got older and tried to move into adult roles, it was not easy. Agents warned her not to become what they called a character actress, meaning someone who plays interesting, complicated parts rather than safe, pretty ones. But she felt drawn to the truth in those complicated stories. She chose films like The Ice Storm in 1997, Buffalo 66, The Opposite of Sex, and Sleepy Hollow. At 18, she received a Golden Globe nomination. But stability felt far away. Beneath the surface, she was fighting a painful battle with her own body. At 15, she developed anorexia. She talked about covering mirrors just so she would not have to see herself. Her 20s felt wild and unstable, shaped by a childhood that had never given her solid ground. In 2013, she got married, and what started as a promise slowly became something terrifying. In 2020, police were called to her home after a domestic battery incident. She sought a protective order. Court documents described things so disturbing that she hid every knife in the house to feel safer. She described being dragged and slammed into furniture during lockdown. The divorce that followed drained her finances so completely that she had to sell designer handbags and fine jewelry just to pay her bills. She later said that some traumas bring financial destruction with them, and both hit her at the exact same time. But then came something different. In 2021, she married a British hairstylist named Mark Hampton. Their daughter, Cleopatra, was born in December of that same year. On a podcast, Christina said something that stopped people in their tracks. She said this was the first time in her life she had ever felt real love in a healthy way. That quiet sentence said everything. Her career started rising again. She was cast in the hit show Yellow Jackets, which earned her an Emmy nomination. And then, in a moment that must have felt surreal, she was cast in Netflix's Wednesday series, working right alongside the new Wednesday Addams, Jenna Ortega. A full-circle moment that almost feels written by fate. In March 2025, Christina Ricci stood on the Hollywood Walk of Fame with her husband and children beside her and received her star. The girl who once said it felt like child abuse to make a child famous, who also said that film sets had been the only safe place she knew, had built herself something real, something that was truly hers. Now here is a story that begins completely by accident and in somewhere nobody could have predicted. Jimmy Workman was born on October 4th, 1980 in Fairfax, Virginia. He was not trying to be an actor. He was not working on a big dream. He was just a 10-year-old kid tagging along with his older sister Chanel to her audition for the Addams Family movie. She was focused on her lines. He was wandering around the set the way kids do when they think no one is paying attention. But someone was paying attention. Director Barry Sonnenfeld and producer Scott Rudin saw the easy, natural way he moved through the room. They called him over. They asked him to read for Pugsley. And the moment he opened his mouth, it was over. He got the role right there on the spot. His sister Chanel did not get the Wednesday role since that went to Christina Ricci, and that single afternoon quietly changed the direction of the entire family's life. Jimmy appeared in both Addams Family films and picked up small television roles along the way. He had tiny appearances in shows like Matlock and even had an uncredited moment in a 1996 comedy film. But then puberty arrived and changed everything. He grew taller. He got slimmer. The round, lovable look that had made Pugsley so perfect disappeared, and Hollywood stopped calling. His last acting credit showed up in 2005 in a small, mostly forgotten project. Rather than chase something that was no longer chasing him back, Jimmy made a quiet and smart decision. He stepped behind the camera. He built a career in the transportation department of film productions, driving cast and crew, moving equipment, keeping long shooting days running on schedule. He joined the Teamsters Union, a prestigious brotherhood of film and television workers, and became someone that productions genuinely relied on. His work shows up in movies like Star Trek from 2009, Suburban from 2017, and others. He stays completely off social media. He guards his privacy carefully. His estimated net worth is around $500,000. Interestingly, his half-sister is Ariel Winter, the actress from Modern Family, who has a net worth closer to $12 million. They share the same mother. And in 2013, when Ariel was just 15, Jimmy got pulled into a painful public custody battle. He fought to become her guardian, arguing that a different family arrangement was not working. A judge made a ruling in May 2014, and Jimmy walked out of the courtroom in tears. It was one of the hardest chapters of his life. But there are still moments when the old world pulls him back in. At a 2024 convention in Los Angeles, he reunited with Christina Ricci, Angelica Houston, Christopher Lloyd, and other cast members. Fans gathered, cameras flashed, and Jimmy told stories about Raul Julia, about how kind he had been to the child actors, about how those memories had never faded. And then the convention ended, and he went back to the quiet lanes of Hollywood, where trucks roll through the night, and someone like Jimmy keeps the wheels turning without ever needing applause. And now we arrive at the name everyone is talking about. The one who broke every record. The one who danced her way into the hearts of 150 million households in less than a month. Jenna Ortega grew up in California's Coachella Valley, far from the bright center of Hollywood. When she was 6 years old, she watched Dakota Fanning in a movie called Man on Fire and felt something ignite inside her. She told her mother that she wanted to be the Puerto Rican version of Dakota Fanning. Her mother was working as an emergency room nurse, putting in long and exhausting hours. But she heard what her daughter was saying, and she started driving Jenna to Los Angeles 5 days a week, each round trip taking 6 hours in total. That kind of love, a parent driving 12 hours a week so her child can chase a dream, is something that never gets talked about enough. By the time Jenna turned 18, she already had a serious career. She had done Disney Channel shows, appeared in the thriller series You, and starred in horror films including Scream and X. Each role was a step forward. Each one made her sharper. So when the Wednesday offer landed in 2021, most people assumed she would jump at it. She did not. She actually passed on it multiple times because she wanted to focus on films and felt she had already spent too much of her time on television. Then she found out Tim Burton was attached to direct, and everything paused. Burton had reportedly told the production team that if they could not find the right Wednesday, there would simply be no show. The whole thing rested on one person. Jenna auditioned over Zoom while she was in the middle of filming another movie. She was exhausted. She had fake blood on her, and somehow that rawness was exactly what Burton needed to see. He later said she reminded him of what Winona Ryder had during Beetlejuice, a quiet, burning intensity that felt like it came from somewhere deeper than performance. He saw what he needed, and the role was hers. Filming for Season 1 began in Romania in September 2021 and wrapped in March 2022. When the show premiered on November 23, 2022, it did not just succeed. It exploded. In the first 5 days alone, it pulled in 341 million hours of viewing. It broke the record for any English-language series on Netflix. By the second week, it had climbed to 401 million hours. Within 28 days, around 150 million households had watched, making it only the third Netflix title in history to cross 1 billion viewing hours. Jenna was 20 years old, and her Emmy nomination made her the second youngest nominee in her category since Patty Duke back in 1964. In one of the episodes, she performed a dance that she had choreographed herself, pulling inspiration from decades of music and movement, including, beautifully, some inspiration from Lisa Loring herself. She later admitted that she was sick when she filmed that scene, waking up that day feeling like she had been hit by a truck. You would never know it watching her. A podcast appearance in early 2023 stirred up some controversy when she spoke candidly about some of the show's creative choices, mentioning storylines she found confusing and suggesting the show skewed younger than she preferred. The timing landed awkwardly during a writer's strike in Hollywood, and writers from other shows made jokes about her comments on picket signs. She later acknowledged that she could have been more careful with her words. But here is the important thing. The showrunners did not pull back from her. They moved her forward. They gave her an executive producer credit on Season 2, trusting her vision even more deeply. Season 2 became the largest production ever filmed in Ireland, stretching across stunning landscapes and premiering in 2 parts in August and September 2025. It brought in major new stars and brought back Christopher Lloyd, who had appeared in the original 1991 Addams Family films, this time playing an entirely different character. Before Season 2 even finished airing, Netflix had already renewed the show for a 3rd season and announced that Eva Green would be joining the cast. Jenna's personal life also kept growing. Her Dior ambassadorship, her starring role in Beetlejuice in 2024, which earned $452 million worldwide. Her estimated net worth climbed to around $5 million. But through all of it, she has been honest in a way that feels rare. She said that after the show exploded, she felt unhappy. Not thrilled, not overjoyed, unhappy. She talked about how overwhelming the sudden, enormous attention felt for someone who is naturally more introverted. She had always been someone who let the work speak for itself, and then went quiet. Suddenly, the whole world was loud around her, all the time, and she did not know what to do with that. But she kept moving, the way she always had. From those long childhood drives in her mother's car to the global weight of Wednesday Addams, she has always let one moment lead quietly into the next. And then there is one more story we have to tell, because it is unlike anything else on this list. Jerry Messing was 12 years old when he played Pugsley in a 1998 direct-to-video film called Addams Family Reunion, a movie that most fans have already forgotten. But that role opened a door to something that many people do remember. Soon after, he appeared as a character named Gordon Crisp on Freaks and Geeks, a beloved television show from 1999 and 2000 that became a cult classic over the years. He was warm in that role, gentle, the kind of presence that you just genuinely like. In 2003, he made a quiet and surprising decision. He walked away from acting entirely and moved to Florida to study psychology. The spotlight faded. Years passed. And then something happened that he never saw coming. An old headshot of him made its way onto the internet in 2013. It was a simple photo just him smiling in a Trilby hat. Someone posted it to Reddit on Halloween of that year, and what happened next was completely out of his hands. The photo became a meme, one of the most recognized memes of the decade. It spread to every corner of the internet and became tied to jokes about a certain type of person, along with the famous phrase that anyone who spent time online in the 2010s will immediately recognize. Jerry was not entirely happy about what the image came to represent. He told an interviewer he was not thrilled, but he also knew he could not stop it. So, with time, he found a way to accept it. In January 2020, he even started a YouTube channel called Fedora Productions, a way of reclaiming something that had traveled so far beyond him. But while he was trying to move forward, life hit him with something far more serious than any internet joke. In August 2021, he caught COVID-19 while waiting for his second vaccine dose. He was 35 years old and living in Tampa, Florida. His oxygen levels dropped dangerously fast. The only option was to put him on a ventilator. He spent 2 weeks in a coma. When he woke up, he discovered that he was partially paralyzed. He could not walk. He could not move his limbs on his own. Everything he had known about his body had changed overnight. What followed was a long, painful, and slow process of physical therapy. Every single day, he worked to relearn what his body could still do. Every day was a fight. The road was not easy and it was not fast, but he was on it. His story, more than almost any other on this list, shows something important. Fame is not a shield. A viral moment is not protection. A childhood spent on television screens does not prepare you for a ventilator in a hospital room in Tampa. Life comes for everyone, famous or forgotten, in ways that nobody chooses and nobody expects. And when you step back and look at all of these stories together, something becomes very clear. The Addams Family, both the original black and white show and the films that followed, was always a story about a family that did not fit in. A family that was strange and dark and different and somehow, through all of that, deeply loving. And the children who played those roles carried something of that strangeness with them into their real lives too. Lisa Loring played Wednesday with innocent sweetness and spent decades searching for solid ground. Ken Weatherwax played Pugsley with quiet loyalty and spent his final years caring for his mother. Christina Ricci played Wednesday with fierce intelligence and rebuilt herself again and again from the inside out. Jimmy Workman stumbled into a role by accident and found his true self working quietly in the background. Jenna Ortega carried Wednesday into a new era and broke records at 20 while privately learning how to hold herself together under a pressure most of us will never understand. Jerry Messing disappeared from the screen, became accidentally famous again through a hat, and then fought for his life in a hospital bed. None of these stories are simple. None of them follow a straight line. And maybe that is exactly what the Addams Family was always trying to tell us. That the strange and the dark and the complicated are not things to be afraid of. They're just part of being alive. They are part of being human. And somewhere in that understanding, in that strange and beautiful and painful truth, is where all of these kids, now grown, have been living all along. If this story moved you the way it moved us while putting it together, please take 1 second right now and hit that like button below. It genuinely helps more people find stories like this one. And if you know someone who grew up watching the Addams Family, share this video with them. Because there's a good chance they have never heard what really happened to these kids after the cameras stopped rolling. And if you're new here and you want more stories like this, where we go deep into the real lives behind the faces you grew up watching, hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications. We do this every single week and we never rush it. Every story gets the time and care it deserves. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you in the next one.